Hey, Steve here from GRIMWOOD HOLLOW. So a few years back, I made a giant Hannya mask for my nephew's tattoo shop, and I thought it'd be fun to show you how I created it. I started with a simple sketch, worked out the scale, then projected the sketch onto the foam. Next, I cut out the front and side profiles and then started roughing out the sculpture. When sculpting, you always want to start by dialing in your form first, then you can add details like the hair, cracks, and textures. I wanted this to look like an old wood carving with tool marks, aging, and cracks. Here's some shots of me doing final cleanup, which really gives you a sense of the scale of this giant Hannya mask. And here's the finished sculpture. Next, I hard-coated it with an acrylic emulsion and then sealed it with a few coats of gray primer. Before molding it, I decided to have it scanned so that I could have a digital model for some other possible fun projects. Next, I got all the supplies to create a brush-up silicone mold with hydrocal jackets. I had a few friends at work that wanted to learn mold making, so I used this as an opportunity to teach a class for them. The first thing we did was build retainer walls around the sculptures. This helps contain the silicone as you are doing the brush-up. Next, we mixed up the silicone and brushed on the first of 3 layers on both the mask and the horns. It's really important to brush it in good and work out any trapped air bubbles. Then we brushed on a second and third layer of silicone to build up the thickness and fill in any undercuts. It didn't have to be a pretty mold because this was literally going to be used for one casting. And here's the finished silicone molds. So next, we prepped it for a 2-piece hydrocal jacket by creating a divider wall and retainer wall with wet clay. We used small plastic spheres on the divider wall to act as keys for registering the 2 halves. Then we made our hemp nests, soaked them in water, and mixed up our hydrocal. And here's the first half of our mother mold. The hemp acts as a reinforcement fiber, but also allows you to shape the mold and create a clamping edge on the divider wall. Next, we cleaned up the plaster edge with a Surform and Vaseline the surface so the second half of the mold wouldn't bond to it. Then we created the second half of the mother mold and finished the clamping edge along the divider wall. For the horns, we did simple 2-piece plaster bandage jackets. So then we removed the clay and cleaned up the rough edges with a Surform. And here they are, all finished and ready to open. We removed the mother molds first and then carefully peeled off the silicone. Then we put the 2 mother molds back together using C-clamps on the clamping edge and placed the silicone back into the mold. The horn molds we just strap back together with tape. Here's the aftermath. The sculptures almost never survive the mold process. Now it was time to cast the horns. I started by slush casting a thin layer of urethane and then backing it with rigid polyfoam. This way they would be durable and lightweight. Next, it was time to cast the mask. I always start by spraying primer into the mold because it bonds to the surface of your part and preps it for paint. Then we slush cast 3 layers of urethane resin into the mold and backed it with rigid polyfoam. And here's the mask. It came out great and just needed a little cleanup. So next, I dremeled out the mouth, attached the horns with bolts and wing nuts, and then foamed a piece of wood into the back for mounting. And now it was ready for paint. First, I hit it with black primer, and then I did the base colors of the mask. Next, I did the gold on the eyes, teeth, and horns, and also painted the gums. Then I did a brown wash on the entire mask to age it, and then dry brush lighter colors to create contrast. And then it really came alive once I airbrushed the shadows. And last, I did some final detail painting and aging for the cracks and damage, and then hit it with a clear coat. And here's the finished Hannya Demon Mask. Here it is, hanging in its new home at Till Death, my nephew's tattoo shop in Denver, Colorado. And here's me and my nephew Josh making our best Hannya faces. Thanks again so much for watching and supporting our channel. We really hope you enjoyed this. See you later.